Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of 5 Minute Find, where we share family history tips in 5 minutes or less. I'm Amy Johnson Crow. In this episode, we're going to cover alternate sources for death information. One of the most common records that we look for in genealogy is the death record. And we usually think of the official civil death record, like the kind that you get at the courthouse or the Department of Health. But sometimes we can't find it. Perhaps our ancestor died before that area started keeping death records. Or maybe the records don't exist anymore, whether through a courthouse fire, flood, or they've simply been lost. And sometimes our ancestors died in places that we're not expecting, so we're just not looking in the right place yet. Well, fortunately, there are numerous records created at or near the time of death that can give us some of that same information that we would expect on that official civil death record. Now, there's actually too many for us to list in the next 5 minutes, but some of the common ones that we're going to cover include tombstones, obituaries, church and pension records, as well as mortality schedules. Tombstones are one of my favorite sources, but just like any other source, you need to evaluate it. This tombstone for Jacob Pettit in Maple Grove Cemetery in Newark, Ohio, states that he died May 19, 1872. And this stone is very consistent with the type that would have been erected in the 1870s, so it's likely that this tombstone was put up near the time of Jacob's death. On the other hand, this tombstone for Charles and Susan Scott is very modern and is not at all consistent with the type that would have been put up in the 1850s when Charles and Susan died. And remember, the longer it takes to record an event, the more likely it is that an error creeps in. That's not to say that this tombstone is wrong, but we need to consider the possibility. Obituaries. You really should look for obituaries even if you do have a death record. Sometimes they will just state that the person died, but sometimes they can give you quite detailed information, such as this one for Mrs. Flora Parker, wife of Christian Parker, who died yesterday, which would be the 10th of July, 1884, at the residence of her father, W.C. Bainbridge. So we have statements of relationship, we have an exact date and place of death, just wonderful information here in this obituary. Church records. Some church records keep wonderful death records. First, determine your ancestor's denomination. Take a look at what minister married them. What denomination was he? And also, are your ancestors buried in a church cemetery? Once you determine the denomination, look for records of those churches in the area. Quakers kept wonderful records, including death records, such as this one from the Reading Monthly Meeting in Berks County, Pennsylvania. Isaac Lee, father of the aforesaid children, departed this life the 5th of the 1st month, 1829, buried at Exeter, and he's aged 76 years, 3 months, and 10 days. Military pension records. They can include information about the death of not only the veteran, but also his widow, and sometimes even dependents, such as minors and parents. Here's an example from a Civil War pension file, where it mentions that the veteran, Milas Kenworthy, died on the 3rd day of May, 1909. Mortality schedules. This was a different part of the federal census, and it was taken in 1850, 60, 70, and 80. And it covers deaths in the 12 months before the official census date. For example, 1850 covers the 1st of June, 1849 to the 31st of May, 1850. Many of these are available on Ancestry. Look in the card catalog for Mortality in the title. Here's an example of the 1850 mortality schedule from Napa County, California. Piece of advice, be careful when you're looking at the date, looking at the month where the person died. If it says that they died in December, in this case it's going to be December 1849, not December 1850. this is just the start of other types of death records. If you can't find a civil death record for your ancestor, don't be discouraged. There are numerous other records with death information.